research is a collaboration between Norway and Japan, and we want to develop a better analysis for submarine landslides. And the need for better analysis is because we are currently relying on the tools and insight tailored for onshore landslides when evaluating the risk in the submarine environments. For example, currently we can perform slope stability analysis, and when the safety factors are low, we move on to CFD or depth average to predict the impact of the debris flows on the offshore infrastructures. However, there are some certain limitation on this approach. For example, we have somehow to know the landslide volume before running the CFD simulations. But in my opinion, it should be the outcome of the simulations. Therefore, we developed the coupled CFD NPM analysis to simulate the entire process of the submarine landslides, and we can perform effective stress analysis for the slope failure, but also for the runout of the debris flows. And we can get into how the seawater, the marine sediments, and the structure interact with each other in every single stage of the submarine landslides. And last year, we visited Port and Airport Research Institute in Japan to use the geotechnical centrifuge result for validating the models. So it is a 9-meter diameter beam centrifuge, and in the soil containers, the slope was submerged under the water, and the slope failure was triggered by the seismic loading. And we want to understand what is the influence of the permeability in the failure mechanisms. So for example, the soil in case 1 with 5% of the clay content have higher permeability than case 2, the soil in case 2 with 20% of the clay content. And what we see here is that in case 1, we observe the gradual slope failure from the red line to the blue line. On the other hand, in case number 2, there was a transition from the slope failure to the gravity debris flows. And in order to understand the difference in the failure mechanism, we can look at the excess pore pressure. So in case number 1, the soil was liquefied right after the seismic loading, but then quickly dissipated to no pore pressure after the seismic loading. And you can look at here is the value of the excess water pressure is completely dissipated. On the other hand, in case number 2, the pore pressure dissipated much more slowly. And therefore, it is very important to have a slow dissipation of water pressure for the extended runout of the debris flows. And the liquefaction induced by the seismic loading is not enough to generate the gravity debris flows. And we also use the model to study the dynamic behavior of the gravity debris flows. And here we try to replicate the physical experiment of the underwater debris flows in the lab. And we have a very good agreement in terms of the runout positions. Another application is to perform the back analysis of the actual landslide in Norway. And the point here is that we can capture the transition from the slope failure here to the debris flows, the hydroplaning. We can also have the turbulent turbidity currents and the soil entrainment between the debris flows and the seabed. And we also apply the model to understand the spread failure mechanism in the scooter gas slides. So here the spreading failure mechanism is involving the breaking of the marine sediment into smaller blocks, namely horse and grabens. And these blocks are tilted and displaced along a failure surface. And you can see in the seafloor seismic profile after the scooter gas slide here. And by using the coupled CFD NPM model, we can replicate the formation of the horse and the graben under the seismic loading. And it shows that actually the seismic loading can trigger this type of failures, and supporting the hypothesis that actually the stored gas slide could be triggered by an earthquake. Another advantage of the model is that we can look at the pore pressure and the mean effective stress, and therefore we can incorporate any advanced quantitative soil model. For example, if we can incorporate the soil dilatancy, we can capture the decrease of the pore pressure along the shear band here, and an increase of the mean effective stresses during the onset of the shear band. And equally important is that we can study the interaction with the structure between the gravity debris flows and the structure like this one. And here we can see the difference between the onshore saturated debris flows and the underwater debris flows. For the onshore debris flows, is more like a frictional flow when the soil grain is sticking together, and therefore we have a certain value of the effective stresses in the debris flows. On the other hand, for the underwater debris flow, it's more like a turbulent flow, and in the turbulent area here, the soil grains are separated from each other, and we do not have the value of the effective stress. So it implies that actually if we are using the tool for onshore landslide, it might not be a good idea for simulating the underwater landslides. And we also capture the change of the water level compared to the experiment. And I think it's very important if we want to simulate the landslide-induced tsunami. So in my presentation, I have shown that the model can capture different mechanisms: earthquake trigger liquefaction, transition to the debris flows, entrainment turbulence flow, interaction with the structures, and tsunami generation. And the novelty of the model is that we can capture all of these mechanisms within a single simulations, and which demonstrate how we can explore the extended debris flows and how we can form the spreading failure mechanisms. And in the near future, we want to investigate further how the debris flow impact on the offshore structure, such as the suction anchors. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions and comments?